So yesterday I had my CT guided biopsy where they took a needle or took a sample of some lymph nodes in my back. A fairly painless procedure, basically because I fell asleep halfway through it. I think the sedation that they use is pretty good, and it'll take about a week to get those results. So in the meantime, I've come back to Runnymede, where my cousin's family property is, where I've been staying since last year, 2024. I was fortunate enough to stay about a couple of weeks with my partner and her sister, so that I could go to all the medical appointments in the city to save me having to drive up every second day. But anyway, I've come back to return to normal, I guess, to my home base, so to speak, which is basically just my Sprinter van and my shipping container that I've turned into a study. And so I just guess I'll be waiting for the next week or so to get the results, and I imagine that they'll call me if there's any urgency, which I imagine there would be, because if it is lymphoma, it's the aggressive form that I had before. And I guess I'll find out soon what type of cancer it is and what the treatment plan will be. And if it's similar to what I had the first time, where it was a 3-week cycle where I'd have 6 to 8 hours of R-CHOP chemotherapy, then what I'll do is I'll just drive to the nearest train station where the V-line train goes for regional areas to the city, and I'll just take the train in for the day, because that'll be a lot cheaper than paying for diesel and driving up there and then trying to find a park in the city long enough anyway, because the car parks in the city are basically 2 hours mostly, or 1 hour. And like I said, the R-CHOP used to last 6 to 8 hours the first time. So I'm presuming that will be the case. I don't know what will happen. But anyway, I've come back. I thought along the way I'd stop in at the cemetery here, because it's been a while since I've actually paid him a visit. A good way to contemplate life, I guess. So this is my father and sister. They're buried just here. They were killed in a car accident in 1979. My sister was 5 at the time. I was 9. The whole family was in the accident. But anyway, this is my mum. She died less than 8 years later. She died in her sleep, died in 1987. Accident was in 1979. So over the years when I was living in the city, I'd come out on weekends for my weekend time-lapse road trips type of thing. So I'd work during the week, come out on weekends, and I'd often visit here. If I'm really honest, sometimes I come and talk to them and apologise that I'm still alive type of thing, and sorry for how I had treated my mum while she was looking after me when I was going through my depressive period, and I didn't know I was depressed, and I was very abusive. I used to be physically violent, not to her but to myself. I used to cut myself and punch holes in the wall type of thing. It was never directed at her, but it wasn't until I was 18, just before she died, that I actually realised how my actions, even though I was hurting myself, were actually hurting her more, because she was starting to get scared of me because of my sudden random outbursts of violence and self-harm. So one of my biggest regrets is the fact that just as we were started to get along, because I spent most of my time being in my bedroom, she'd be up the other end. We'd never really interact. It would always conflict. There'd always be some kind of confrontation, because I was too self-absorbed in what I was going through as a teenager. And anyway, we weren't very close, put it that way. But it wasn't until actually that the day that she died that I almost had the chance to actually tell her that I loved her. But she was getting in a taxi to take some family that were visiting back to the Flinders Street station in the city to take the train back interstate. And on that morning, she was about to get into the taxi, and I said I was staying home, and I had this urge to say something. So I said, "Mum." And she stopped and looked at me and said, "What?" And what I wanted to say was that I love you, but for whatever reason it didn't come out, and I just said, "Have a good day." And the reason why this is important is because that night she'd come home, she was tired, she'd fallen asleep on that couch sitting up, and I'd walked from my bedroom down the long hallway, and I was going to ask her something, but I saw that she was sleeping, so I thought, oh no, I'll just leave her there, let her sleep. And then about half an hour later, I heard, she was a big woman, and I heard a big heavy footsteps coming down the hallway. And I came out the room with a big smile on my face because I was about to say, oh, how was your nap? How are you? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she was so angry and upset that she grabbed both my arms really tight and shook me and was yelling at me, why did you let me sleep? Why did you let me sleep like that? And I was surprised, I didn't know what was going on. So I just said, I thought you needed your sleep, so I just let you sleep. You look comfortable, blah, blah, blah. And then she goes, you should never let me sleep. Don't let me sleep like that. And then I'm thinking, I got angry then because it's like, well, I did nothing wrong. What did I do? What did I do wrong? You were just sleeping. That was what I was thinking to myself. And anyway, she let me go and I stormed off into my room again and then all upset because, what did I done? What did I do this time? I've done nothing wrong, blah, 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 blah. She'd gone to bed and I was 18 at this time and I always had, at that time I used to go out for midnight walks, even up to the 4 o'clock in the morning, just walking around the local area in the parks and that, just sort of hoping to think and clear my head and write down ideas and that kind of thing, or thoughts of stories or just thoughts. But anyway, I was so angry this time that I did that. I walked out. I remember as I left, I could hear her snoring in her sleep, so I knew she was asleep. Anyway, I came back, probably about 2 or 3 hours later, maybe it's probably even, 2 o'clock in the morning or something. I didn't notice anything in the bedroom, but I went to sleep, and the next morning, which was a Thursday, my grandmother had her own keys to the place because she used to come every Thursday to take my mum grocery shopping because my mum couldn't drive because of her long-term injuries from the car accident. So anyway, I could hear my grandmother coming up the hallway and I was sort of vaguely awake and I knew that it was Thursday shopping, so I didn't think much of it and sort of tried to go back to sleep. And I hear her going into my mum's room saying, Lina May, wake up, Lina May. And then I heard her turn around quickly and come straight towards my door, which was closed. And then because I could hear the urgency in my grandmother's voice, for some reason, as I rolled out of bed, I had the thought that she was dead. I don't know why that popped into my head, but it just did. Then anyway, as I opened the door, my grandmother was saying that she can't wake up my mum. So as I walked in, I was looking at my mum's chest and I could see it wasn't rising. And I was looking at her eyes and they were kind of partially closed, but her eyes had rolled up and glazed. And then I went to touch her wrist to check for a pulse and her arm was cold and I couldn't feel a pulse. And then I don't remember exactly what I'd said, but I knew she was dead and I told my grandmother, and my grandmother had rang up the doctor or the police. And anyway, long story short, just trying to say that that night or that day, after so many years of me being an angry, bitter young man who's put a mother through so much pain and uncertainty because I was always punching myself, angry at myself, and being depressed and not knowing I was depressed because depression wasn't a thing really back then. This was in 1987. We had done a bit of counselling, so about 6 months prior to this, and that's why I was getting a bit closer to her. Because it was at that counselling session, the last one, that they had a go at me and pointed it's like I was sitting in a room with a mirror in front of me, so there was obviously observers behind that mirror. And there was 2 men, or 2 psychologists or whatever, sitting beside me. My mum was over there. And all of a sudden, they suddenly turned on me, the psychologist, and saying, do you know what you're putting your mum through? do you know your mum, do you know why your mum put the lock on her door, bedroom door? And I said, yeah, because I used to steal money, so she put the lock on there to stop me from stealing money. And he said, no, she's put the lock on there because she's afraid of you. Because when you're punching holes in the wall, she's afraid that you're going to hurt her, and she gets scared, so she wants to lock herself away. And I said, no, I'd never hurt anyone. I'm hurting myself. And then when I'm saying all this, and he's continuing on with whatever he's saying to me, I could see my mum just sobbing in the background, just crying, just sobbing. And then it was at that moment that I realised how much I'd been hurting her. That life isn't all just about me or what I was thinking or going through. I was hurting my mother, who's my only remaining family member from the car accident. So anyway, I got angry with how I was treated then, because it wasn't until a few days later that I started thinking like this. So I never went back to a counselling session. My mum did. But anyway, over that period of time, 6 months before she died, I had made more of an effort. I had calmed down a little bit, had spent more time with her as much as I could, being a teenager, because as a teenager you always just want to sleep all day and stay up all night and watch TV or whatever, play games on your computer. But I tried to spend more time with her, and we started to get a little bit closer. And that's why on that morning that she died, I got to the point where I just felt like I needed to tell her that I loved her. And I guess in hindsight, it's because maybe I had that feeling that she was going to die, that could be the last time I'd say it. And as it turned out, it was. So I guess you could say that I was 10 when the car accident happened in 1979. And I can only imagine that from age 13 that I'd never actually told her I loved her. I'd ran away from home several times during school. She had to take me to the doctor because I cut my arm so deep that I could see the vein pulsing in one of my self-harm sessions. So I can only, now as an adult, I can only imagine what she must have gone through as a mother and even as a human being. So I'm having regret, obviously, because I feel guilty about that, and I was never able to reconcile that. So I guess I'm telling you this story because, it's easy with family to lose your patience or take them for granted and so on, but my life experience is that you never know what's around the corner. You might wake up one morning, you go to bed one night, and the next morning you're dead. You don't wake up at all. So I guess I just explaining that's why I have so much depression now and PTSD, because that's my personal experience. I can't take any of that back, of how I treated my mum when I was going through my phases of hurting myself, and I will never know whether she knew that I loved her. People will say, oh, she's your mother, she would know, but I don't, because I never actually said it. And it's just part of my story. So anyway, I come here sometimes, and I guess that's why I come here, and I don't really talk much to them. I try to, but I usually don't know what to say, but that's why I often say that I'm sorry. I hope you can forgive me, and that one day when it's my turn to die, that, God willing, that I'll get a chance to see them one more time before I go to hell, because I don't think I'll be fortunate enough to go to heaven. So, but I just hope there's an opportunity where I can see them one more time and just give them a hug and say, look, I love you, I'm sorry, and forgive me. So basically, yeah, I visit the cemetery when I can. Sometimes it's only for a few minutes just to physically see them, tidy up the graves a little bit. But needless to say, they're always on my mind. So having said all that, which is kind of, I've gone off, well, I don't really have a script anyway, I'm telling you what I'm feeling, but Anyway, now that I'm dealing with the prospect of having cancer again, it means my future is really unknown. I don't know how much more time I've got at all. You know, maybe if I'm lucky, it'd be like the first time. If it's the same lymphoma, maybe I'll just go through another 8-12 months of chemo, and then I'll go back into remission, and then I'll still be living. But it might not turn out that way. It might be a really highly aggressive cancer that they can't control, that they can't cure, and I might only have a few years left to live. I don't know. I mean, it's not like I've had any goals whatsoever at all. I've always gone week to week, day to day, because, you know, of how my mind thinks, how, you know, my PTSD, my depression. It's very hard to get motivated or set goals for myself because, one, I get distracted easily, and two, it's like, what's the point? I'm always feeling hopeless. Like, why go through all this effort to capture my time lapses and edit them all and then upload them to YouTube where I'm only getting like 35 views and that kind of thing. So I have those kind of thoughts. And how can you set a 5 or 10 year goal when most of the time in the back of your mind you're thinking about you're better off dead, you feel like dying? That life can be too overwhelming sometimes, and too hard, too much effort, which I guess for me has been more so since I finished chemo in 2021. Because ever since then I've had the usual typical chemo brain and focus, concentration issues, but I've had a real struggle with fatigue. First off, it was physical fatigue, and then I was left with the mental fatigue where whenever I try to be productive, whenever I try to think of something new or it's hard to explain. It's just like having writer's block. If I want to write a story, it's like, okay, I'm going to write a story, and then you go to put the pen on paper and it's like nothing comes out. And that's what it's like for me visually when I'm trying to think of, okay, I'm going to edit this, make this video, use these time lapses, tell my story, whatever it happens to be, and then I go to do it, and then I just can't get it out. And then usually when that happens is that when I start feeling that draining feeling in my body, my head feels like it's thickening up, that there's a physical wall in the frontal lobe or whatever, then it just starts getting tired, my eyes get tired, my head gets heavy, then I feel drained, and then I think I've just got to lie down for 15 minutes, and that ends up being a few hours of deep sleep. That's kind of been a cycle for the last year especially. Which is why I haven't actually been posting or uploading any videos as much as I used to. Even though now I'm not working, I've got all this time in the world, which is ironic, but I'm not really doing anything with it because I'm always tired, or I'm distracted with something else, or, you know. Anyway, I'm not trying to make excuses, I'm just saying how it is for me. So that's the result of the first lot of chemo. I feel like it's aged me, the treatment has aged me mentally and physically. And if I have to go through that again with something maybe even different or even a stronger dose of treatment, I'll probably be worse. I mean, as it was, I was told that the first lot of treatment was high dose, which is why they kind of shrugged off over the 4 years of reviews that I'd always say, look, I'm feeling tired, I'm having a hard time concentrating, I can't focus, blah, blah, blah. And they'd tell me, we gave you a high dose of, chemo, so it'll probably, it's really affected your body, blah, blah, blah. As it was, it affected my heart, so now I've got a mild case of cardiomyopathy with the chemo I was having. Anyway, I better get going because Joe, my cat's in the van. It's been a bit of a warm day. He's been in the van all day. So he'll be looking forward to getting out, stretching his feet. I don't really know what to think or what to do, really. I'm starting to get that numb feeling, that feeling detached. But I can't let that get to me again like last year. I need to be productive this year. I know I'm going to be tired all the time now, more so than last year, and I didn't achieve anything with what I was doing before last year. So I think this year, not knowing how my treatment will go or how much time I'll have left, even if the treatment is successful, I think I might start travelling a bit more locally, do some more of my photos and try and concentrate on the tutorial videos that I wanted to do to show people what I do with different type of cameras, mobile phones that I use to capture time lapses. And hopefully I'll write that story that I promised God that I'd write the first time when I asked him to give me more time. And I can't complain, even if this cancer ends up being terminal. I did ask him in 2020 if he can just give me a little bit more time, and he gave me 4 years, so I can't complain.